we missed the mark
Mhm.
here. Okay, please let us know what you actually want. And that builds so much more trust than just holding steadfast to, no, but no, this is what we said we were going to do. And
Mhm.
you're wrong for experiencing it incorrectly. How can you tell someone that their experience is wrong, right?
Welcome to Lime Listen and Learn, the People Leadership Lounge. If you're new here, a lime is a Trinidadian way of gathering. It's unhurried, relational, and rooted in conversation. It's the kind of space where people pull up, settle in, and they talk about what's really going on. I'm your host, Abbiola Ballah, founder of Fern Education Studios, where I support professionals and organizations navigating uncomfortable workplace conversations through one-on-one coaching and the Clearer Conversations Lab. So this is not an interview in the traditional sense. It's a live. You'll hear us thinking out loud, making connections, sitting with tension, laughing when we laugh, and staying with the conversation as it unfolds. So pull up, settle in. We're gonna get into this. Today, I'm liming with Ashlee Sang, and we're getting into that thin line between internal organizational culture and public perception, trust building, values alignment, cultural integrity, and everything in between. So many gems in this episode. So pull up a chair and come lime with us. Ashlee, it is so good to see you. I am so happy to have you on the podcast. Happy to lime with you today. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Y'all listening, it's been a long time coming. But we are here, we're liming, and this is a conversation that I've actually been really excited to talk about because this topic is something that I've been thinking about too. It's not, it's been coming up a lot with clients and with organizations that I've been working with, and not even those I've been working with, who other people in my orbit have been working with as well. And I think it's something that I think a lot of organizations and a lot of people struggle with a lot. And that, not to like tease y'all asking probably like, well, what is it, Abbiola? So we're kind of looking at that intersection between internal culture and public perception and what that means, right? Because there's a story that we tell, as an organization, they tell the public, right? What they believe in, who they are, what they value, how you show up in the world, right? But then there's that internal experience. And what does that mean for organization on the whole as individuals, especially as leaders, right? How are people treated, how decisions are made, what conversations are avoided, what's the ones that actually happen, all the things that people, what's really happening. I call it let's see behind the curtain, right? What's going on behind the curtain. So I think I definitely, knowing the type of work that you do, I can't wait to like just kind of dig in and this could get juicy. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Here's hoping.
I hope so too. But welcome, welcome.
Thank
I
you.
need to say that. Yeah. So tell me from, when I'm talking about like this idea of internal, like public perception versus internal culture, like what's springing to mind for you, I guess.
Yeah. So the big juicy question I keep coming back to is around trust building. How do we build
Mm,
trust with people, real live people?
yeah.
I know AI is all over all the conversations, but there are still people buying things and running businesses and
Absolutely.
operating businesses. And so how can we build trust amongst our people and
Mm,
also in our orbit of influence? So it's not just customers. It doesn't
right.
matter what business model you have. It might be funders, it might be investors, it might
Yeah.
be collaborators, it might be other
Mm-hmm.
partners, it might be the community at large, all of those external people who actually have quite a large effect on the internal. And then there is the talent acquisition, talent retention, general workplace vibe. And that
Mm-hmm.
absolutely affects the output, right? The customer
Yeah.
service, the how hard they're going to advocate at the dinner table or in the grocery store line
Yeah.
compared to the New York Times headline pitch, right? And for me, that line in between those two groups
Mm-hmm.
of people, the internal communications and company
Yeah.
culture and the external marketing, public perception, that line in
Mhm.
between is permeable.
Mhm.
And the ideas and values and experiences definitely go through across to both sides,
Mhm.
and both sides influence the other. And the reason I'm thinking so much about this is because my background is actually in anthropology, and I literally
Mm.
just discovered that business anthropology exists.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
me either. It
Okay.
is a thing. It's a very, very small thing. It's a very small
Cool
sort of
though.
sector niche.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, a brand is an experience. It is
Mhm.
a perception. It is an intention from the
Yeah.
founders, from the company, from whatever touch points you have. And your marketing is a
Mhm.
big piece of that. The marketing is
Yeah.
creating those touch points for that
Yeah.
brand experience to be had. And then a culture is any sort of shared identity,
Mhm.
experience, or values. And
Yeah.
so, how is a brand not a culture? For me, they are one and the same
Mm.
in many ways. And
Mm.
it's really, really interesting to me to figure out,
Mhm.
how do we create a culture? How do we shape a culture through our marketing, through our brand storytelling,
Mhm.
through the people that are involved in that company, brand, and experience?
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about the that line, that line in the middle being permeable and stuff, the first thing that popped into my head, and I'm not gonna lie, was like lost in translation. That's the thing that popped into my head.
How
And I
funny.
think because I think sometimes a lot of things get lost in translation through that line. Right. And I think when you're talking about trust building, I think that's where the breakdown starts to happen. Right. In terms of there's a lot that's being said internally, or vice versa, a lot that's being said externally, right, actually does not really go through to the other side, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the trust then starts to break down and has people being like, wait, I heard they said this on their Instagram, but we don't do that in the office.
Yeah.
So what? I don't,
That's so funny. I feel like that, yeah, that's the perfect indication, is like, is this a head tilting moment? And
Right.
it's really, your values are that glue that keeps
Mm-hmm.
everything together. It's the thing that keeps the people on both sides of that organization moving in the same direction. It's the sticky, memorable, and sort of visceral part of
Mm-hmm.
the very nebulous brand, right? Like, okay, well, we have this
Yeah.
big vision or this big mission statement. The values in my framework, how I view a brand, the values are
Yeah.
the connector. They are the
Absolutely.
operating system. They are how you make people feel. They are how you are experienced. They are how you make decisions, first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost. And they're how you communicate and justify said decisions. So, okay, you want to update the entire software that, 50 staff members have been trained on. That's going to be a tough conversation, right? If you're able to
Mm-hmm.
point to your values and in conjuncture your audience, this is going to allow us to
Mm-hmm.
serve better.
Yeah.
This is going to be a temporary headache in service of these big values, this big mission, this big vision. It's a lot easier to get a headache situation under wraps, right? Or I'm thinking about misalignment too,
Yeah.
where, so I have two littles, as you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like sort of in the like mom and family culture in my
Yeah.
algorithm. And so I see a lot of like brands that
Mm.
are mom centric.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about how off putting it would be to be buying as a customer, be buying from a baby and mom care brand
Mm-hmm.
and learn that they don't have proper family leave,
Mm.
or they don't support their staff to have
Yeah.
childcare, or to be able to work from home when their toddler, who is inevitably sick,
Yeah.
needs to be at home.
Right.
And that misalignment of, oh, we serve families, but not our families, would be so jarring as a customer, at least a conscious consumer customer like I am and like many, many people are increasingly.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I think that's where it's like they dropped the ball a little bit, right? And I think that one of the things I think about when I think about internal culture, a lot of the times I'm thinking about the fact that this culture is actually built on, yes, values, but those values come out in the conversations that people are having with each other, right? And the ones they are avoiding,
Mm,
right? As well. Because, like I'm not thinking about like internal culture as just like the website and what they have, people had like those statements on their website
mm,
like in 2020 and the
yeah,
handbook and all of that. I'm also thinking about, like you said, who's getting that family leave, who's being told the truth about what is actually going on within the company, who is expected to kind of like just absorb whatever tension is happening quietly and just like see, we'll see what happens kind of
yeah,
thing, right? Because I think eventually then, like you said, you're like we're talking about those kind of conversations, right? Tend to then start to bleed out through that line. Going back to, I like that image of that
yeah,
line. Going back through that line about how people are talking about the organization itself, right? And then that's when people get to find out, wait, they don't have family leave? Wait, but we're buying, from them and we're thinking therefore family structure. Like I feel like that's when that starts to happen. So that means that that public perception is not, how can I put this, is not like separate from those like everyday things that are happening within the organization, right? So
mhm,
yes, that there's that line. Sorry, I'm just going on a like I think there's that line, but I think like that whatever if you're just listening, my hands are doing things. Like I think the way this it's the communication, I guess, is moving, right?
yeah.
It's it's showing it it it's showing how we see a company, how we interpret what they are about or who they are about, and it affects how those within the company are experiencing it too, you know?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said the everyday things because
Yeah.
actually, like in my sort of elevator pitch these days, I talk
Mhm.
about how together with my clients, we're aligning big ideas with those
Yeah.
everyday actions
Yeah.
because a strategy is only as good as it is implemented, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm even thinking of you were saying the things that we avoid. I'm thinking
Mhm.
of, like, DEI efforts or
Mhm.
quotas for specific
Mhm.
identities, or even, like,
Yeah.
congressionally, or I know some countries
Mhm.
have literally, 50% parity. Or,
Right.
let's say, "Yes, we're gonna hire this type of person because it checks this
Mhm.
box," whatever that
Mhm.
identity or quota might be. But then they're technically on payroll, but they don't get the same opportunities, or they're not in the same rooms, or their
Mhm.
voice is not as valued, or whatever that experience might be. So,
Yeah.
yes, they might technically be hired and part of the
Mhm.
organization, but are they actually integrated into the organization? That's a big question. Or
Don't
like
get
I
me started.
yeah, yeah, or I think about nonprofit boards, for example.
Mhm.
I come from the nonprofit sector and I've been on many boards, and they often are very misaligned and misrepresentative of the communities that they serve, right? I mean, some
Mm.
boards get this really right,
Yeah.
and it's not to say that any type of identity needs to be on a board or off a board, but
Yeah.
if there is no community voice from
Mhm.
the top down, how is that aligned, right? Or how is that
Mhm.
a reflection of your values? And maybe it is, maybe you're able to justify that because of your
Yeah.
values. That's what I love about values work is there's no right or wrong value. There's no right or wrong way to apply said value. I mean, we might
Mhm.
agree or disagree with how they are applying it, but it is for each organization and
Yeah.
each customer and each group of people who interact with that
Mhm.
brand to decide whether or not that's in alignment. And I think that's really powerful and permission giving. Also a little bit tricky because there
Yes.
is no playbook that you can just follow and magically be right and good.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's the little things that add up. It is making sure that the everyday really do work toward the big picture. And it
Absolutely.
really is considering the actual people who are involved in all of these conversations and context.
Mhm. No, I absolutely agree. I think, little like these I had a thought and it just went out of my head. But it was around when you were talking about these little actions, right? They make a big difference, right? And they can have big impact. They add up
Yeah.
and in good and bad ways,
Yeah.
right? I talk about a lot in my work with my clients too. We don't need the grand gestures. I call it grand gesture syndrome. I'm like, let's
Sure.
get out of having a grand gesture syndrome, because a lot of the times grand gestures are the things that put us get us they get us in trouble because we can't sustain them, right? And they're
Mm.
not realistic, right? In
Mm.
reality, we're just like, we're doing this big thing, right? We're saying this big thing, we're making this big, statement, right? Whether internally or externally.
Yeah.
But then can you really do that,
Yeah.
realistically do that? A lot of the times that happens. Yes, sometimes the intention is great because it's, connected to whatever values that the organization has. The leaders also align with those values, right? But can you realistically do that thing? A lot of times, no, right? But when you start looking at it from what are the smaller shifts that we can make and the tiny actions that we can take, right? Those start adding up and those make more of an impact, in my opinion. I would even say, be bold and say, in my expertise, I've seen it happen,
Yeah.
right, over the years, right? They make a big difference. Now, the flip side of that is that those tiny actions that can also have a negative impact
Oh, yeah.
on someone else. And that's where I think we also need to be aware of. It's not all of the time that it's going to have that positive impact, right? And that's when we have to, shift and, or whatever, right? But it can go both ways. And I think a lot of the times that we feel like these things have to be perfect, in order, like, oh, we have these values, so we have to do these things so perfectly in order for everyone to believe that we have these values,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of that happened with like equity and inclusion initiatives, right? In that we have to be perfect or else. And we're like, actually, that's not possible because we're still all human beings, And yes, yes, we hold certain values, but if you think about it, right, as a leader, and the organization has its values, but you as an individual, right,
Mm.
you hold your own values too. And yes, a lot of the times where you're working, you're aligned, right?
Ideally.
Ideally, a lot of the times you're not.
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
go both ways, right? But you're still trying to live your values, even if
Mhm.
it's not 100% aligned, right, with the place that you're working at. And I think that's when I'm going back to that line. I think that's when leaders can become that bridge or that bottleneck or that things to go through that line, what's internal versus what's external, right?
Yeah.
Because, they can be also, you know, s- saying or sharing what the organization values, but then what is the team really experiencing,
Yeah.
I
And
think that's
that's making me think of a brand more globally, and
Mhm,
then also the sort of leadership to team or management to team parallel.
mhm,
So when we think about brand building, when we think about
mhm,
brand messaging and like really, okay, here's who we are, here's what we stand for, we have an intention. And a brand is really all about perception. So we cannot control how we will be perceived, how we will be
mhm.
received. That is out of our control. It depends entirely on the individual and or the group of people and their experiences, their values, their walk of life. Like how they view the world absolutely shapes what you are putting out into the world, regardless of what your intention is.
Yeah. You mean it's not just colors and font?
Exactly, right. But at the same time, any internal initiatives are the same. So you
Yeah.
can have this really big, I'm gonna be a grand gesture. Was it big gesture or grand gesture?
Grand gesture.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a grand gesture leader, and
Yeah.
I'm going to say, by 2028, we are going to XYZ. And your team might actually take that in a completely negative way, regardless of how
Yeah.
well intentioned you were. Or
Absolutely.
you might start on the opposite end of the spectrum of like, let's just give some breadcrumbs here. Like let's just sprinkle in $50 raise here, or
Mm.
volunteer day there,
Yeah.
whatever the issue might be. And your staff, instead of viewing it as like, well, that's better than nothing. Wow, that's progress. Your staff might actually view that as like, why are we getting breadcrumbs in here instead of a grand gesture? Like, give us something
Yeah.
worthwhile. We don't want XYZ. We want A over here,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So I think that's why really, really clear, intentional conversations, copy,
Mhm.
content,
Yeah.
messaging globally is essential, because that way it's not lost in translation. If it is, it is
Yep.
it's closer in that game of telephone that we're all playing constantly. You're,
True.
one or two people away from the source rather than at
Mhm.
the end of the line and it's just gibberish, right?
Yeah.
So we cannot control how that internal memo or how that big campaign is going to
Mhm.
go over. We can't control it, but we can be as intentional, as clear, and as upfront and sort of upwind thoughtful as possible.
Mhm.
And that's the best we can hope for. And then we have to correct, right? We have to have those tough
Absolutely.
conversations, or we have to make that public statement, or we have to have that capacity to have empathetic listening internally and
Yeah.
externally to, we missed the mark
Mhm.
here. Okay, please let us know what you actually want. And that builds so much more trust than just holding steadfast to, no, but no, this is what we said we were going to do. And
Mhm.
you're wrong for experiencing it incorrectly. How can you tell someone that their experience is wrong? Right.
Right.
So there's so much nuance here,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
so much permission and leeway, and also kind of troubled waters. And that's
Yeah.
just the world we live in. And there's no way to kind of like controversy proof your business, especially the bigger it gets. The more
No.
people you have, the more people you serve,
Yeah.
the more money you make, the bigger platform you have,
Exactly.
the more people are going to be able to weigh in on that. And that just comes with the territory.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree with you. You said my favorite word, nuance,
Mhm.
because a lot of this is so nuanced. And I think a lot of the times we forget that, right? And, when I was saying before about, they can be the bridge or the bottleneck, I think the bottleneck part comes from what you were talking about just now, where they're, having to have those kind of, difficult and a lot of the times very uncomfortable like conversations, or they're like over explaining decisions that are being made, right? And we're talking about leaders within the organization, right? Without like really listening to what their team wants or needs or is saying or is seeing, right? Because
Mhm.
we talked about perspective, right? They're going to have a different perspective on it as well. And, or even like trying to protect the organization itself, right? And their image and what's being put out there and what people are saying. And I think it's a lot to hold
It is.
as as someone in there, like you're holding so many different pieces of it that it can get sticky, I guess. For it can also get spicy.
Mm.
But I think one of the things that I definitely agree it with is that it's something that you still have to move through, right? And I always say that a lot of the times, it always comes back. I think a lot of this as human beings, it always comes back to communication and having conversations, right? And we have to be able to move through the difficult ones, the uncomfortable ones, just as much as we move through the really easy ones to have, right? Where we're all aligned and we're all holding hands, right?
Yeah.
And, playing a game or something like that. So I think it's not simple in any way, shape, or form, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And two things came to mind as you were
Yeah.
talking about sort of the easy conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and you said when we're aligned. right?
Mhm.
So there may be a day where we're not aligned anymore because
Absolutely.
we, as founders, leaders,
Mhm.
managers, change as
Mhm.
humans. The vision
Mhm.
of the organization might change. For sure, customers are constantly changing. The
Yes.
market, the economy, our
Mhm.
world is constantly changing. So
Yes.
for us to think that we communicate once, we nailed it, we do that forever and always is incorrect and unsustainable.
Absolutely.
And our values might even change. They are definitely our North Star, but
Mhm.
our values are something to be audited and reevaluated often, not constantly. You don't want to be willy-nilly
Mhm.
over here. You want to stand for something, but it would be
Right.
like a pivot, right? It wouldn't
Yeah.
generally it's not a
Mhm.
180, but it might be, a 5-degree turn, or you
Oh,
might turn
yeah.
all the way to 90 degrees. And
Mhm.
because you have more information, because you've had more conversations, because you
Mhm.
discovered, oh, we actually have this opportunity to do something differently, better. We need to then reframe again our operating system, our values, to be able to
Mhm.
uphold that and to be able to connect what it is what we're working toward and the people we need, our audience, to get that done or to get
Mhm.
to serve them as best as possible. So that was my thought around easy conversation.
Yeah.
And then we've mentioned listening and empathy a
Mhm.
couple times.
Yeah.
And a conversation is not a conversation without that listening piece,
Mhm.
without the other person on the other side. So even if you're B2B, even if you are like institutional, you're a foundation and you have,
Yeah.
big international projects and you never see the face of the person who receives the money, like even then, it is a conversation.
Mhm.
And it really does matter that both sides understand each other. You don't need to be
Mhm.
clones of each other. In fact, that's
No.
that's really the case or rarely beneficial. But you
Yeah.
do need to mutually understand and
Mhm.
respect where the other person, party, entity is
Yeah.
coming from
Mhm.
and how you can coexist, operate, do the best work possible, make the
Mhm.
most impact possible in that container, right? Because we
Yeah.
all, as little like walking circles around the world, we Venn diagram connect with a million and one people, organizations,
Absolutely.
causes, identities. So it is very ungenerous of us to think that we need to be one way, one thing for one type of person.
Yeah.
We are able
No.
to ideally in open enough, sort of accepting enough situations, we're able to bring the many parts of us and we're still able to work on the things that matter to us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Listen, I'm going through perimenopause. I'm a different person every day.
So
Listen,
I have
right before.
heard. So I have
Listen,
heard. Not about
I'm
you,
just
but just it's
no,
in general.
I'm just telling I'm sorry, gentlemen, or those without a uterus who are listening to this, and don't want to hear it. But right before recording this, I was bawling my eyes out. Do you want to know why, Ashley?
I'm guessing it
Because
was unusual.
I was watching a show and they shot the dog. They
Oh,
shot the puppy. The puppy died. Bawling, but it was fictional. Did not matter.
oh.
Different person every day. But no, I think I absolutely agree with you. We change, right? As human beings, we change. So many external factors change us too,
Yeah.
internal and external, right? They shift how we think, how we are, how we grow, right? How we learn. Like what we're saying now, I always say, do the best you can based on the knowledge that you have right now, right? But
And
when
the
you have
resources.
and the resources, right? But when you have more of any of them,
Yeah.
okay, it's time to do better,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Then, and because when you were talking about like the easy conversation and stuff, for me it brought up in my head my second favorite word, or they're neck and neck, just iteration, right?
Mm.
It's needed and so necessary. I come from a education background. I come from a background where it's about assessment, and iteration is a big part of that. We
Yeah.
assess and then we iterate, right? Nothing ever stays the way it is. Like programs don't stay one way all the time. No, we run it based on the knowledge that we have and resources that we have.
Mhm.
And then we assess it and then we iterate for the next, right? And that's same with all of these things as people, right? And even with our values, things like that are also things that iterate. As you said, it could iterate maybe 1-2% shift, 1-2 degree shift, 80-degree shift. Hey, there are people sometimes you're like, whoa, you made a big 180 on this one. It happens,
That's right
right?
for them, right? Like,
And
maybe that
that's
was what they needed to
exactly,
do, and, like, maybe they're
exactly.
better off, and everyone that they come in contact with is better off, and, like, you do you.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully. But what one of the things that when you were talking about that I wanted to bring up when you were talking about, listening and having conversations with each other and being able to have these conversations and listen to each other, no matter, even if you don't agree. I think one of the pieces I would also throw into that mix, because again, so many other pieces too, but one of the pieces I would also throw into that mix is when you're able to look at the conversation that you're going to have through who am I actually centering for whatever I'm working towards, right? Is this about us? Or is this about, let's say it's a nonprofit and you're working with certain grantees or something like that? Or is it about them,
Mm.
right? Who exactly am I? So is it about my ego that I need to be right, right? Or is it that we can come together because it's not about us personally, but it's about what's best for them. And when you start to think about who are you centering in this conversation too, I think that also starts to shift, how we have the conversation, how we listen, how we show up to each other, whether we agree, disagree, things like that. I think it's one of the other things that helps to part of that nuance, right? Of it as well. So yeah.
The center makes me think of another visual,
Mhm.
because when I think of now I'm switching gears more toward, like, the public perception, external marketing. When
Mhm.
I think of audiences,
Mhm.
we have a core audience. We have core beneficiaries, core customers,
Uh-huh.
core partners, core funders, whatever model
Mhm.
you are. There is, like, a particular person where, like, where
Mhm.
when you're writing the first part of your LinkedIn about section, or when you are writing the hero headline on your homepage, like, you're thinking of and
Yeah.
speaking to that person, that group of
Mhm.
people, right? And so I like to think of it as a bullseye. So that
Mm.
core audience, person, avatar, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
is at the very center. That doesn't mean you can't serve or reach or be of use to
Yeah.
people outside of the bullseye on the
Mhm.
target. It probably means, though, that if you are centering people who have nothing to do with your business, your vision, your values, like, you just think that it should be because, this competitor or this industry norm or whatever else, or maybe yourself, like, maybe you're not even on the target, like, maybe you're not even on, is it the target? Yeah, the target at all.
Yeah.
And so if you are centering the conversation around you and you hit you off of the
Mhm.
target, then the results are not going to be good. Whereas if
Mhm.
you are centering it as close as possible to the core person, group of people, persona that you are aiming to reach, perfect. The ripple effect
Mhm.
will certainly reach people outside of that core audience. And again,
Yes.
you can have various dartboards for various
Mhm.
initiatives, but we want to be aiming as close as possible to that core audience, because anything else will just be detracting our bandwidth, our resources, our budget, our message. It'll be diluting.
Mhm.
And if we do get, like, let's say we get a few hits on that outer ring, we might be attracting
Mhm.
more people from that outer ring. And we don't want more
Mm.
people from the outer ring because we're not best positioned to serve that outer ring. We're best
Right.
positioned to serve the bullseye. So in whatever way that is useful, both for those
Yeah.
internal conversations and for that
Mhm.
external messaging, marketing, positioning. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, for anyone who needs a visual, I like to think of it that way.
I love visuals and I also love ripple effects
Mm,
because I strongly believe in the ripple effect of everything that we do.
for
So
sure.
no, love that visual. Okay, I think we're at the spot, Lee, where we kind of segue because I can keep talking about all of
I
this.
think we both could.
But
Yeah.
yeah, for a long time.
Yeah.
But I would love to get to the part of this podcast where you get to say it with your whole chest. So this is the segment where you can say something bold, something that's been on your mind, something that it can be tender, it can be spicy. That's okay, whatever it is. Say it with your whole chest. So what do you got?
Okay, I feel like that buildup is bigger than what I'm going to share.
Never.
But a tenet I hold around business and work and identity, just in general, is that it can feel good and do good. And in fact, it probably should. Like, if we are
Mm,
showing up in the day to day and it doesn't feel good, something is wrong. And
mm,
we can make a change for ourselves. We can plant a seed for the organization to make a change. We can change the entire industry. And of
mhm.
course, like, there are limitations. There are financial constraints. There are systemic constraints. There
Right.
are, the market is wild. I know this. And also, to the best of our ability, in whatever phase of life we're in, with whatever
Mhm,
resources we have, I truly believe that we should be doing something meaningful with our day
mhm.
in and day out and whatever privileges and platforms and resources we have. That is something I believe in so wholeheartedly, and
Yeah.
I think is hopefully universal enough that anyone can apply through whatever lens they're looking at the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, feel good. I agree with you. I think I think, yes, lots of nuance in there. And when it comes to power, privilege, all the
Mhm,
things. But the idea of feeling good in what you're doing, it doesn't, I would say what's coming to mind for me when I hear you say that is that it doesn't have to mean that you're feeling good all the time. Because I think that's kind of maybe impossible. Because as much as I love my business, some days I would like to just be binge watching TV and not have to, or reading a book,
mhm.
right? Because it's not making me feel good at that moment in time
Yeah.
because there's a lot going on, right? But that doesn't mean I still don't love my business. I do, and I actually love what I do. I love my clients. I love the people I work with. But some days,
That's
so
making me think of, like, when my four-year-old is literally just screaming for, like,
yeah.
an hour straight and scratching and kicking. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean I don't love her, but there are other
Hmm.
things I would rather be doing.
Hmm.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's what I'm hearing when I hear you say that it should make us feel good, right? It's not an all or nothing thing, but more, and of course you can correct me if I'm wrong, of course, please. Right? That's kind of what where I my brain went when I heard you say that, which is why I
Yeah, I
said I
think the
agree.
arc of it, right? Not
Yeah.
necessarily the day in, the day out, not necessarily hour by
Mhm.
hour, but do you feel good with sort of the legacy you're leaving
Yeah.
or the relationships you're
Mhm.
building, the seeds you're planting?
Mhm.
Do you feel like you're making progress towards something?
Yeah.
And do you feel good about that? Do you feel good about the environment you're in? Can you
Yeah.
change it or can you leave it for something better?
Mhm.
I feel like those are
Mhm.
two questions that we can ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Even if we can't do it immediately, can we
Right.
work toward that?
Can we work towards that? And absolutely, that's the thing because I'll say this and I'll just throw this out there. When I lived in Japan for 10 years and I had known by year 6 it was time to leave.
Mm,
But it actually took me 4 years before I could actually make my exit.
mhm,
Right? And yes, there were times within those 4 years that I did not feel good, right? But for me, I was teaching, so my students always give me this glimmer of hope. So that's what I'm hearing.
mhm.
You're saying there's gonna be something that can, even if you can't leave it right now or do something about it right now, there you can still find those little pockets of joy and something until your circumstances can shift
Yeah.
if needed, right?
Mhm.
Because it unfortunately, even though we live in a world where it's right here, right now,
Mm.
we a lot of things take time, to move and to develop and to just get us on the right path. And I think what you're reminding me also, this is also very helpful for me, is to like strip away because sometimes all I can see is the negative. All we can see is the negative pieces, right? So I think what you're saying also helps us to strip away the negative just for a moment.
Mhm.
Like go behind the curtain of the negative,
Yeah.
right?
Or
And
you see the negative and how can you flip it? Like,
yeah, and how
okay, then
can we
what is so if you see
yeah,
something that isn't right, what would be right? What would feel
right,
good? What and
exactly,
like, okay, you didn't get it on the first try. Okay, what would be the next iteration of that?
right,
I
exactly.
don't think bad is bad necessarily. I think
Yeah,
it's an indicator of what matters to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love this. No, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
Has
thank
me
you.
thinking even more. I love it. I love it. All right, Ashley, this was so good. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. And liming with you was awesome. And now please tell the people where they can connect with you and find you and do all the things.
Yes, well, the people, you can find me talking about values all over the internet. AshleeSang.com is my home base. I am most active on social these days on LinkedIn, just at Ashlee Sang. And I have a podcast that's on hiatus, but has 104 episodes. It's called the Purpose and Progress Podcast. And I have conversations not too dissimilar from this. And then for anyone who wants to start taking action, get in and do a little bit of nitty gritty. Okay, let's put this into motion. I have a free guide called A Visionary's Guide to Elevator Pitches. And it's that first step to be able to talk about the work you do and why it matters and connect with real humans who might be able to partner with you. And that's available at ashleesang.com/elevator.
Amazing. Thank you. And all of that will be in the show notes. So go there, click on the things, connect with Ashley, download the free guide, do all the things. Ashley, thank you so much for being here. Such a pleasure.
Thanks for holding the space.
To everyone listening, thank you for aligning with us today. Genuinely. Whether you've been here from the beginning or this is your first time, I'm so grateful that you chose to spend this time with us. And if this conversation resonated with you, please share it with a colleague, a friend, someone you think needs to hear this. And also, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening right now, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever, so you don't miss the next one. You can also join our mailing list at ferneducationstudios.com for resources and updates that don't make it onto this feed. This kind of conversation is also at the heart of the work that I do at Fern Education Studios, working with managers, directors, and mid-career professionals on the comfortable workplace conversations that matter the most. If that's something you want to explore, you can learn more at ferneducationstudios.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Abbiola Ballah. And all of these links will be in the show notes. So until next time, my friends, keep liming, keep listening, keep learning.